The screen is black. Then a single spotlight hits white polyester. John Travolta, 23, glides across the floor in Saturday Night Fever. The bass line thumps. The crowd roars. Cut to him in Greece, leather jacket gleaming, singing like the world belongs to him. Private jets, mansions, the kind of beauty that made teenage girls faint in theaters from Tokyo to Tulsa. But here's what nobody asks. What happens when the lights go out and the only sound left is the echo of a hospital door closing? What happens when the man who taught a generation how to dance has to learn how to walk through grief that never ends? John Travolta's story isn't tabloid fodder. It's a quiet American tragedy dressed in sequins and smiles. But before we get started, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe button, because you never know when YouTube decides to hide my videos from your homepage. And, of course, leave your thoughts in the comments section. Now, let's jump into it. A man who became an icon only to discover that fame is the most elegant prison ever built. The Golden Cage. The very thing that made him famous, the swagger, the hips, the effortless charm of Tony Manero and Danny Zuko, became the lock on the cell. By 1978, he was the biggest movie star on Earth. Saturday Night Fever grossed more than any film in history up to that point. Grease sold out every theater it touched. He was 24 and already a millionaire many times over. Studios begged him to dance again. The public demanded it. So he did. Staying alive. Two of a kind. Perfect. Each one a desperate attempt to stay inside the image that paid the bills. The critics sneered. The box office cooled. By the mid-1980s, the Disco King was a punchline. The white suit had become a straitjacket. He watched younger actors take the serious roles he craved. He watched the phone stop ringing. And still he smiled in every photograph, because that was what the cage required. Back to the cracked sidewalks of Englewood, New Jersey, 1954.
The air smells of rubber and motor oil from his father's tire shop. Salvatore Travolta, Sam to everyone, had been a semi-pro football player before life turned him into a working man with grease under his nails. 6 kids in a modest house. Not poor, but never far from it. The youngest, John Joseph, arrived last. He was the baby, the one who watched his mother, Helen Cecilia Burke, light up every room with song and story. Helen had been a professional singer with the Sunshine Sisters. She had performed on radio, acted on stage, then traded spotlights for a high school drama classroom so her children could eat. Every evening, the Travolta living room became a theater. Siblings Joey, Ellen, Anne, Margaret, and Sam rehearsed lines, while John, barely tall enough to see over the coffee table, mimicked every gesture. His mother saw the hunger in him before he could name it. She didn't just teach him to act. She taught him that performance was survival, that the stage was the one place a working-class kid from an Irish-Italian neighborhood could rewrite his own story. John absorbed it like oxygen. By 16, he had made a promise, silent, ferocious, to the woman who believed in him. He dropped out of high school, packed a single suitcase, took a bus to New York. The debt had been signed. He would make it. For her, for them, or he would die trying. He crawled through frozen rivers of rejection, cattle calls in freezing lofts, commercials where he was told he was too ethnic or not ethnic enough, off-Broadway in a play that closed after 6 performances, a national tour of Greece where he played Duty, the comic relief, while dreaming of the lead. Then, in 1975, Welcome Back, Kotter, Vinnie Barbarino, the leather jacket, the finger snap. America fell in love overnight. And right then, at the exact moment the world opened its arms, the first crack appeared in his own. On the set of The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, 22-year-old John met Diana Hyland. She was 40, an actress of quiet power. They fell hard. The age difference scandalized the tabloids. They didn't care. For the first time, he had someone who saw the frightened boy beneath the swagger. They moved in together. He proposed. Then, in March 1977, just months after Saturday Night Fever wrapped, Diana died of breast cancer. He held her hand in the hospital room while the cameras outside flashed for the new king of Hollywood. He walked out of that room into a spotlight that now felt obscene. The boy who had promised his mother he would conquer the world
had just lost the one person who made the conquest feel worth it. He kept dancing. The 1980s tested him the way only failure can. Roles dried up. Studios wanted the fever kid or nothing. He took whatever came. Talking babies, country singers, forgettable thrillers. The money kept flowing, but the hunger gnawed. He bought planes, flew them himself, chased adrenaline to outrun the silence. Then came Kelly Preston. They met filming The Experts in 1987. She was bright, grounded, unafraid of his ghosts. They married in 1991. For a moment, the cage felt like home. 3 children followed. Jet in 1992, Ella Blue in 2000, Benjamin in 2010. John spoke of family the way other men speak of religion. He built a life in Florida, away from the Hollywood machine. He flew his own Gulfstream to work. He seemed at last at peace. But peace is never permanent for men who carry debts to the dead. In 2009, on a family vacation in the Bahamas, 16-year-old Jet suffered a fatal seizure. He had lived with Kawasaki disease since childhood, and a history of seizures the family managed privately. John and Kelly were there when it happened. The world watched them bury their firstborn, while headlines dissected their faith. John had joined the Church of Scientology in the early 1970s, long before fame. Diana had introduced him to its teachings. After her death, it became anchor and armor.
Critics called it denial. The public called it strange. John called it survival. How does the richest man in the room become its loneliest occupant? He had the jets, the estates, the Oscar nomination for Pulp Fiction, the role that proved he was more than a dancer. Quentin Tarantino saw what others had forgotten: the quiet menace, the comic timing, the depth beneath the smile. In 1994, Vincent Vega walked into screens, and Travolta walked back into relevance. Another comeback, another fortune. Yet the validation he craved most was never handed to him. Not the kind that comes from critics who once dismissed him as a pretty face. Not the kind that comes from a stable family untouched by disease. He kept losing the women who anchored him. First Diana, then in 2020, Kelly. Breast cancer again, diagnosed in secret, fought in secret, lost in secret. She was 57. He stood at another grave, this time with 2 young children looking to him for answers he barely had himself. The psychological twist is not scandal, it is pattern. The boy who learned performance was love learned to perform strength when love kept dying. The controversial habits, his fierce privacy, his unwavering commitment to Scientology, the way he retreated to Florida and planes and family, were not eccentricities, they were symptoms. When the world took everything that mattered, he built a fortress out of the one thing no one could seize: belief. He became the man who could dance through any storm because he had already danced through too many funerals. Back to the cracked sidewalks, back to the boy in Englewood. It is 1970. John Travolta is 16. His mother watches him pack the suitcase. She knows the promise he has made her, even if neither of them says it aloud. He stands in the doorway of the tire shop, the smell of rubber thick in the air, his father's rough hand on his shoulder. One last hug from siblings who have already chosen the stage. He steps onto the bus to New York. That single moment, 16 years old, no diploma, nothing but hunger and a promise, would either save him or destroy him. The screen fades to black again. Only this time, we hear a single piano note. Then the low thump of a bass line. Not the disco beat. Something slower, sadder. The sound of a man still walking the same cracked sidewalks inside his own mind, decades later, searching for the exit that was never drawn on the map. John Travolta kept his promise. He became the star. He survived the cage. He buried his loves and kept smiling for the cameras, because that is what icons do. But here's what nobody asks. When the final curtain falls and the last spotlight dies, who is left in the dark with him? A boy from Englewood who once believed performance could outrun pain. A father who taught his children the same lesson his mother taught him. A man who danced his way through more graves than most people attend in a lifetime. And somewhere in the silence, perhaps he is still dancing. Not for the crowd, not for the critics, just to prove the cage never really won. Fade out.